Good morning. I see there are some people here already. Man, this is Jason on 3.5 hours sleep. Oh, if I could sleep, then I, I wouldn't have nearly the problems that I do. How's everybody doing this morning? Good morning. I'm just here to do my weekly duty of showing up here to talk to everybody. Charlie, good morning. Bob, good morning. Snowman, good morning to you. Samuel, Jonathan, Trev, good morning to you. Alex, good morning to you. Tech for Your Needs is here. Good, good. How's everybody doing this morning? Give me an emoji that describes your morning. Amir, good morning. O'Dane, good morning to you. And I assume this is an insult directed at me, right? Yeah, right? Yeah, I'm assuming so. Thank you for the insult. I appreciate it. Nur, good morning. How's Russia this morning? It's cold and bleak here in Iowa. We got some nice snow overnight, and it's the kind of snow that sticks to the trees, and so all the trees are white, and the snow is not dirty and gross yet, so it's not bad actually. Jay, good morning. How you doing? It's evening in Zambia right now. Good to see you. Thanks. Oh, it's not an insult. Good. Well then, thank you. No snow in London. London's got England has like you would think England would have a similar kind of weather to most of the Western Hemisphere, but it seems like England has its own weather. It starts to get light in England at like 4:30 in the morning, which is weird. It's just weird. Got snow in in Indiana there, Mad Hatter. Beautiful 60 degrees in the Alabama Gulf Coast. Well, good for you, Bob. Don't rub it in, man. Game ski. Well, it's afternoon here almost too. It's 11:15. So I use the term morning loosely. Uh, all is. I don't know if I could say all is well in my world, but I'm living. I'm surviving. Hope everything's good with you. It's cold in Ireland. See, maybe that's why all my people went from Ireland to here, except for the fact that it's cold. It's cold as hell here as well. I grew up in West Virginia, which has a large Irish population, or like emigrated years ago Irish population, and yeah, very cold in West Virginia. Matt Hatter, thank you, man. I appreciate it. Tech loving mama's here. Good morning to you, Charlotte. Yes, man. As somebody who has an Irish heritage, I have never been able to get to Ireland yet. I played shows in the UK, in England, in London, and I was going to sign a record deal with an English label, but I made the mistake of asking them for money. and yeah, so Ace Rockola, new membership. Thank you, sir. Membership is the way to a man's heart. Appreciate it, man. Thank you very much. A chilly 72 degrees in Miami, huh? Well, I hope you survive. But bundle up when you're at the pool today. Yeah, O'Dane, it's interesting. People argue about the 120 hertz thing. A lot of the 120 hertz effect is really like the touch response, and Apple has like a different kind of touch response than a lot of other phones do. So their phones don't look as bad at 60p or 60 hertz than Android phones, most Android phones at least, would. So I'm looking forward to 120 hertz. But again, like, I've been using the Note S20 Ultra here for the past several days, and I've switched between 120 and 60. I mean, at 120 you can have 1440. At 60 you get 1080, and I don't know. It's six of one, half dozen of the other, in my opinion. But a lot of people have 120 hertz is the flavor of the month when it comes to smartphone features. So everybody's got to have it. I appreciate it, O'Dane. I do. Well, Charlotte, I'm glad I could bring some dancing into your life this morning. Are you sure you haven't had some kind of libation that's also helping? It's all, I mean, no judgment. Yeah, the 120 hertz on the iPad is pretty badass. So I have not personally used a Sony phone. I've looked at them in store. They look beautiful. Sony makes really high quality stuff. A lot of people speak very highly of the Sony Xperia line. So I'd say it's worth a try if it's got the specs and everything that you want out of it. It can't hurt. I mean, from the comments on my video from yesterday, was it yesterday? It seems like so long ago. Yeah, yesterday. From the comments yesterday, it seems like a lot of people are pretty upset with Samsung, and not just, I mean, people who are, dyed in the wool Samsung purchasers. So yeah, I think the Sony's worth a try. I can't like swear to it, as I haven't used any of the phones, but I mean, I'm still a big fan of the LG phones. It's going to be interesting to see what other companies have out, because I mean, I haven't been the Pixel 5. I mean, the people who've used the Pixel 5 seem to love it, and the same goes for like well, people are mixed on OnePlus. I don't think OnePlus is what it used to be, but how it's just how it is. Note 20 Ultra is boss. I see you're on this account today, not the Note 10. Isn't that what you had? Anyway, yeah, I can understand why people are pissed. And it's weird. I don't know if any of this is ever any kind of indication of anything, but the two Samsung S21 videos that I've made have really not gotten the views that I typically get on Samsung stuff. And I don't think I'm being like particularly harsh on Samsung, but I'm definitely calling them out for what seems to me to be a real downturn in what they're offering their consumers for, for the money that they're asking. And not a lot of people have tried to defend them, which that's a first. Travis, none of your S21 videos are doing well. Yeah, I'm getting the same sense that people aren't as into it. I mean, it's a weird time of year. This is the first time they've done it in January, and maybe people are still like in a holiday hangover or something, and just, they spent all their money over the holiday season, and they can't even think about this phone right now. I don't know. It doesn't help that it's underwhelming, but yeah, one of the reasons I want to talk about Samsung here on the Friday Morning Coffee is because, my Samsung videos used to do really well, and I enjoyed making them. And even when Samsung was doing things that I wasn't super psyched about, I still enjoyed making them, still had, some pretty boisterous discussions down in the comments. But over the past year or so, like, the interest in the Samsung videos has seemed to dwindle. Either that or people just decided not to bother with watching my videos. I don't know. and I'm so underwhelmed by the S21 offering. And so, I mean, some people say we're going to get a Note this year. Some people have said that we aren't. If they discontinue the Note series, I can't really see myself spending a lot of time on Samsung anymore. I mean, is that a mistake? Because they do make good phones. I mean, I got the Note 20 Ultra right here, and this is, pretty much my top phone, soup to nuts, of 2020. I mean, I love the iPhone 12 Pro Max as well, but this phone, the Note phones have always been special. So it's not that I don't like Samsung phones. It's just they seem to be walking backwards while still holding their hands out for that money. I know that they did drop the prices, and I think they had to, but still, $800 is not cheap for a phone. And I think you're getting, other than the chipset and the camera. Well, we can't speak for the camera yet. We haven't got it in hand to use it, but usually the cameras are at least passable. They haven't been up to the level that they were in the past. But yeah, I really think that other than the processor and the camera, you're pretty much getting a mid-range phone for $800. And you can go buy the Samsung A71 for $500 and get just about the same amount of phone. So I don't know. I mean, what do you guys think? Is it worth covering Samsung anymore? I mean, as Note 20 Ultra says right here, it's no SD card, no charger, no headphones, 1080p on the two lower end phones. Yeah, it's not a good look. It's not a good look, and they were so evasive in that event yesterday. They were so evasive in that event. It was just really bizarre. They talked around all of the things that they had cut. They didn't talk about screen resolution. They didn't talk about the charger hardly at all. Yeah, I don't know. It's just, yeah, it's you're driving your kid to tech or school, Ace. KD, I don't hate Sony headphones. I mean, I got Sony headphones like right over here. Like the MDR V6s. I really like a lot of Sony's headphones. I'm just not as big a fan of the Sony wireless stuff as a lot of people seem to be. I don't think they sound as good as people give them credit for. That's my personal taste. They are high. They got those headphones have all kinds of features that I'm sure people like, but they're not features. I don't care about EQ. I don't care about being able to control all that stuff. The 360 audio thing isn't a selling point for me. So when I pretty much judge a set of headphones on sound, comfort, overall quality, and none of the bells and whistles really matter to me. So that's why I'm not as big a fan of the Sony wireless, like the WH-1000 XM3. I finally got to the place where I can say that name. It's amazing. So it's not that I hate them, and sometimes I might overstate for effect just to get the point across. But yeah, it's yeah. I don't hate. And yet, Hugo, the matte black that they came out with yesterday looks really good. And as you all know, if you've been around for a while, I only wear black. Black is a good thing. I wish they would, they did that. Okay, so they did their little Apple mini featurette thing about the black, and they were talking about how they made it and how it was hard, and they had to get simple instead of they never actually finished telling us like how they did it. I'm not asking them to give away trade secrets or anything, but they just showed us like a piece of glass and a color swatch, and that was the end. I wanted to know more. Um, and yeah, Mike Walsh, the Samsung mocking Apple at every turn for every courageous decision that they make, and then turning around and doing the same thing within. I mean, the iPhone 12 hasn't been out for more than 4 months, and Samsung has already turned around and copied the the no charger thing. And no matter how you slice it, whether it's good for the environment or not, or whether it's just a wash when it comes down to, how much of an impact it has, Samsung and Apple both made the decision to leave the charger out, in part because it raises their profit margin. It Even if it's by a minuscule amount, it allows them to be more flexible with the price, and so they did it. And Doodle, you're right. I mean, Apple had the courage, and I'm joking when I say that. I hope you guys know that, to take these things away first. I don't know if it's. I'll never forgive Apple for taking away the headphone jack. But I don't know. At least they're willing to put their heads on the chopping block first. It feels worse to me, or at least it feels like it's bad and also somewhat hypocritical to make fun of Apple for doing something and then turning around and doing it yourself. And Samsung's just, they look hypocritical when they do this. They have to understand how it looks and how it plays to the audience. Knuckles Baba one says, I think you should still cover Samsung as long as they make the phones. Diehard Samsung fan, and I value your reviews. It seems that the best trend is to wait a year to get a phone. Yeah, I mean, as my good friend Zach, co-host on the podcast, often says, the best time to buy last year's phone is when it's last year's phone and not this year's phone. Because, hindsight being 2020, the S20, at least the S20 line, well, I mean, now they're cheaper, so it makes more sense to buy one now that they're cheaper. It didn't make sense to buy any of them at the prices they were asking. But the Note 20 Ultra is, my camera's not focusing. Why not? Focus, camera. Oh, this always happens. I don't know. I must have pressed a button that I shouldn't have or something. That's always what happens. Oh, give me a moment here, good people. I don't know what's going on. Let me go to the manual focus. All right, I'm going to have to turn the camera down so I can see. All right, manual focus. Oh, isn't this fun? Isn't this what you wanted to have out of this morning? Ah, there we go. Okay. There. It says I have green around my face, so it says it's in focus. Hopefully it stays that way. Jorge, I've never had one of the. I mean, they make beautiful looking appliances. I've never had one in the house, so yes, the SG. The SG is great. It's weird because the body is so light that the headstock, kind of becomes unbalanced, but It is a much lighter guitar, and I don't know. I just like the SG, but I digress. Mac 1164. I'm assuming that's 2020. If 2020 taught us anything, it's that for what we do, we really need a $1,000 phone? Yeah. Samsung was the most egregious last year with their pricing, although maybe give them a little bit of pass because they put out the S20 line almost in tandem with the pandemic. But yeah, I'm sad that what we're seeing is phones getting cheaper, but flagship phones losing features to justify that cheapness. I'd be perfectly satisfied if Samsung and others found a place where their quality and their pricing sort of balanced out. You know, what they asked last year was too much. Is what they're asking this year enough for what they're offering? I don't think so. I don't think so. I just think, you know, that 1080p screen is yeah. Samsung fans have been harsh on Apple for having lower resolution screens, and so it's going to be interesting to see how they handle this. You know, if they try to justify it or if they indeed, as I've seen in the comments, get angry. I haven't gotten a lot of like negative comments so much as I've just gotten comments that are negative about Samsung from people who are Samsung fans. And yeah, Jay Grizzly, I agree. It is not good. Samsung, like, they went too far one way last year, they came back too far another way. Yeah, the the funny thing is, if you look at the specs of the S20 FE and you look at the specs of the S20 and the S21, or the S20 and the S20 Plus, the FE sort of like balances out. It sort of balances out the specs that were. I mean, it's like a better phone than both of them, even though it's lower in some specs, and you know, it's a better value at $700. So, Fat Produce, thank you for the $2 super chat. Excited about Razer Smart Mask. Yeah, you know, I feel bad because Razer sent me a bunch of stuff to make a desk setup video a while back, and I've been slowly putting together the material to get it done. I need to get it done so I can get some of this new Razer gear because that mask looks crazy. I mean, you know, Cyberpunk 2077 was a dud, but maybe we can all look like we walked out of Cyberpunk 2077 by wearing that mask. It's pretty badass. I mean, I've always wanted a chroma medical mask. Is it what is it? N95, K95? Is it certified for the super stuff? Yeah, Terry, I mean, I'm not saying the FE is necessarily better than the S21. I'm saying it's more a better value, price to like specs and performance that you get from the phone. So that's kind of what I'm saying. It's not that they're either one is a you know, the greatest phone ever or the worst phone ever. And Jay, I'm glad that you're mentioning the back thing. Why is it that Samsung every year tries to make some aspect of their phones look like my grandmother's jewelry? The gold is horrible. and especially with some of the color combinations that they got going on. Um, it's terrible. It's terrible. Um, I don't understand the choices. If I were to buy one of the phones, I would only buy the black on black because I haven't seen anything else in the lineup color wise that isn't ugly. And I didn't even say anything about that yesterday because I had too many other things to say about how bad the event was and how poorly Samsung presented the phones, and then how poorly the phones compare to anything that they've done before. Razer should make a version with voice amplification for under $200 that has a light that turns on when you speak. I too would buy that. I mean, even like if they, so I have like a lot of Razer stuff, and you know they have chroma that will react to sound. So if you could get like RGB face mask that has amplification with voice altering filters, and and see, I would buy that in a hot minute. Even if I could get them to send it to me, I would still buy it because I have one mask. I never leave the house, so I don't really need more than one mask, but I hate it because it fogs up my glasses and all this other stuff. It looks like that Razer thing is a little bit more sturdy. And if I could get it to sound like Bane, if I could get it to sound like that, I was born to it. If I could get that from the Razer mask, then it would be a no-brainer 100% of the time. I don't, looking back on that Batman movie, I really don't understand who thought it was a good idea for Tom Hardy to adopt that voice. I also never really liked Christian Bale's like growly Batman voice, but the movies themselves very good, so I let it slide. So I've had a lot of people say this, Samsung basically had an Apple event. The difference is Apple's really, really good at doing these events, and Samsung is a couple of shades higher than like a high school senior's public speaking class assignment. They are not good at this, and they don't write good scripts. And yesterday was so frustrating because they spent an hour and a half saying nothing about the products. And at least when Apple does an event, they give you all the silly graphs, and they give you all of the down and dirty specs and details. They just are really good at sort of slipping that stuff in, not making it bogged down, and moving on to something else. Apple, and the way that they present, starting with Steve Jobs, years and years ago, their presentation style has influenced the style of presentation. I used to teach this stuff, so brief aside, is influenced the style of presentation across the world, and they teach it in university public speaking courses. I don't think Samsung's events are going to be held for posterity in the halls of our palaces of education. And that's not just me being, an Apple sheep or whatever. I mean, I taught Steve Jobs' presentation style. I broke it down and explained why it worked and how it worked. And there was nothing teachable from the events that I've seen from Samsung recently. The event that they did yesterday is, I guess, an evolution from the first filmed event that they did. But it still wasn't good for all kinds of reasons that have anything to do with who the company is. That is a good question. Unfortunately, Samsung doesn't send me the review units, but a lot of folks that I know have them. John Rettinger, of course, MKBHD, Edibong at Board at Work. You know, a lot of people have them, and I'm sure they'll be rolling out some. They'll be rolling out some videos that do some camera comparisons. What they told us about the features that the camera is going to have in terms of software is pretty cool, but I don't know if, you know, I don't trust I don't trust software features until I use them to see how good they are, how reasonable it is to use them, whether or not they're more frustrating than otherwise. You got some, you know, I will say I haven't used, well, I did have the S or the iPhone 12 regular size for a while. But in using the iPhone 12 Pro Max, as well as the Pro, I have that, and I gave it to my daughter for her birthday. I don't know what's different about the iPhone camera this year, but it takes the best pictures that I've seen on a smartphone so far. So I have no hesitation using it as like a B-roll cam for my videos, or using it to take photos for thumbnails or anything like that. I mean, those are the things that I usually use cameras for. So I don't leave the house, and I don't have Mobile Bay close to me. I don't have anything. I was a beautiful place in its own way. However, it's not, it doesn't have like really sweeping, amazing looking features like some other places in the world. So Samuel's saying here that he's a Samsung Knight, and he's perfectly fine with 120 hertz at 1080. And I'm gonna agree with you in a certain way. I believe this was the case. In fact, well, no, I know it's the case because I checked it the other day on my Note 20 Ultra. The Note 20 Ultra, of course, has 1440p, but you couldn't get 120 hertz at 1440p. It had to be at 1080. So what I'm confused about is when I first heard about the 1080p 120 hertz, I assumed that it was 1080p 120 hertz for power saving features. But now they said yesterday that the 120 hertz on the S21 and S21 Plus also have an adaptable variable refresh rate. They didn't say, well, maybe they said and I didn't hear, like what it was 120 down to whatever. But if it has an adaptable refresh rate, then they should. Well, I think they went with the adaptable refresh rate on the S21 Ultra, because that will allow them to, you know, not use 120 hertz all the time and drain the battery. So I think that there's a good reason for the 1080p. It's just an odd choice because it has always been such a huge thing to talk about. You know, it was just a couple of years ago that we had like the resolution wars, where resolution was just like 120 hertz is right now. You know, if you didn't have quad HD, and some phones were even 4K, if you didn't have that, then it basically wasn't a phone. And so it seems odd to walk backward, even if there is a good reason for it. So that's kind of why I feel that the 120 hertz is weird at the 1080p. So Snowman Cat, there is an actual definition and reasoning behind calling it a Retina display. And Retina display has been around for longer than, smartphones with, 1440 or anything like that. They figured out, Apple did a lot of studying to figure out the actual pixel density necessary for the majority of people to be able to take in and not see individual pixels. And that's where Retina display came into existence. So, I mean, unlike the way that they name their chips and a lot of other weird things that Apple does that has no meaning, Retina display is actually referring to how many pixels you need to not be able to see pixels in your retina. And I still think I've yet to see whether it's the iPhone XR or what. I've yet to see an Apple screen that looks bad. It might not have the specs that we can point to say, this is what we need, but I've yet to see an Apple display that looks bad. I was a big critic of the XR when it was coming out because I thought, this is ridiculous. It's not even 720p. But when I got the phone, the screen was good. It was not a problem for me. So, I give them credit for having the way that they do things and staying focused on that and having that be the whole thing for them. Chinese. What do I think about Chinese phones? To be honest, like, I haven't used a ton of them. I mean, Max Goodman here is saying that the iPhone is a Chinese phone. It's a phone made in China, but if you'd be hard pressed to get any technology in your hands that wasn't made in China or India or, other places. Haha, you is being very demanding right now. Hello, sir or madam. I'm glad you're here from Korea. Welcome. I don't remember them saying anything, and I haven't dug to find all the specs, but like I know the iPhone 12 Pro Max does 4K. I think it does 4K 60 on the front camera. Let me look at the camera for the S21 or the S. God, there's so many names. I keep getting them. I'm not going to get in this habit of speaking everybody's name. So, all right, what can I choose here? So 19 by 16. So it looks like the Note 20 Ultra can do 4K 30 frames a second. So yeah, there should be at least that, unless that's something they took away. And yeah, you know what I mean. So Aldo Fern says, originally got the Pro Max, but I returned it for the regular 12. Just really wanted the red color, and it's too heavy. I feel you. I understand where you're coming from. Like, I have the Pro Max right now, and I'm still like just barely within the return window. And even though I love the phone, I wouldn't send it back or sell it because I don't like it. Some of it is, like you say, it is heavy, it is big. I don't mind it so much, but I kind of covet the iPhone 12 black color. that black color is really nice. So I'm kind of jonesing for that. But I also still have an iPhone 7 Plus with 128 gigs of storage. That is that matte black that they came out with, not the shiny jet black, but the matte black. And I still think that's maybe the best looking iPhone ever. So I'm tempted to just, you know, get rid of the 12 Pro Max in order to, put the money in the bank for the stuff that I'm going to need to do for the channel in 2021, and just use that iPhone 7 Plus. I don't know. Because it's still like the thing about all modern phones, and modern phones go all the way back to 2017, in my estimation, is once you start using them and you're not really thinking about what chip is in there or any of that other stuff. Once you get to that place and you're just using the phone, it's really hard to tell much difference between an iPhone 7 from 2017 and an iPhone 12 Pro Max. The iPhone 12 Pro Max on paper, that it smokes everything in terms of how it benchmarks and all that kind of stuff. But to me, in everyday use, it's not as recognizable. Tech Free Needs, good morning. Yes. Yeah, there's just something really satisfying about black. So that's why yesterday in the presentation, I was like, ooh, they're talking about how they're making their black the most black that's possible on the planet. And I was even looking at like the numbers that they were using. I mean, zeros across the board is like true black. And so I was like, ooh, they found a way to make it like, true straight across the board black. But they never explained. They got to the point where they said they figured it out, but they never explained it, and I was upset. Hate the iPhone notch. I understand why people don't like it. The iPhone 10 came out 4 years ago. I think we could just like say, people not liking the notch, stipulated, let's not talk about it anymore and move on. We'll talk about it when it goes away. But I think everybody has gone on the record one way or another to talk about the notch. So as they say in the courtroom, stipulated. People don't like the notch. Put it aside. More discussion. Hole punches are no better. I mean, in some ways, I could say that hole punches are more disruptive because they're gonna be there in the middle of your picture no matter what. At least with the notch, you can orient your video so that the notch is not cutting out that portion of your video, and it's not as easily done with the hole punch, in my experience. So, yeah, I agree. It's not. When they figure out the technology for under the screen everything, then we can all rejoice. We'll have a big party. Yeah, exactly, Iggy. I feel like it's not the perfect solution to the problem, but it's, if it's the price that we have to pay for Face ID, which I think is the most advanced and easiest to use security available on a smartphone. If that's the price that we pay for Face ID right now, then I'm willing to suffer through it, I guess. Yeah, we've talked about, like, graphene batteries have been a conversation for a long time. Like, I think most smartphone manufacturers have done a good job of getting battery life to an acceptable place in most of their phones. Part of that is because all the phones have gotten bigger, and so you can put bigger batteries in them. But yeah, when the battery technology changes and we can have, more power in a smaller footprint, then yeah, I'm really excited to see what happens too. But I don't know. Maybe somebody out there does, but I don't know of like an actual timeline for graphene batteries to like become a thing in the market. So, um, JC, is it just me, or is the notch a huge failure in the engineering world? I mean, other companies are putting cameras behind displays. Well, you can certainly look at it that way. I think I think that it's not apples to apples to compare what the notch is there for, the array of different technologies that they use to make Face ID work is more advanced than just a camera under the screen. And so the notch is a compromise, but I think, to me, Apple, they have a really good sense of design. And so whether or not you like the notch, I think that the notch has become like part of the visual identity of the iPhone. And so in some ways, maybe it's an engineering fail, but from what I understand, it's an engineering fail that was predicated on the fact that it simply couldn't be done at that time, and I guess not yet. But from a design standpoint, Apple has made the notch part of their visual identity. And I don't think that's it's kind of surprising, honestly. So Amir says what people fail to acknowledge is that Samsung has compromised with their removal of the iris scanner and the LED notification light. True. I'm not 100% sure that the Samsung iris scanner was ever reliable enough to really. I mean, I tried to use it and I didn't find it to be super reliable. The LED notification light, that's something that I know a lot of people really like that. So yeah, and also, I mean, people are still talking about IR blasters, and of course the headphone jack and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, when it comes to the security stuff, Samsung's facial recognition thing is not as good, fast, or reliable as Face ID. I mean, that's not me being an Apple sheep. That's just the truth. The under the screen fingerprint readers are getting better, but I still don't like them because it's not as fluid to me to use the under the screen fingerprint reader as it is to just raise your phone and it be unlocked. So yeah, I feel like Android keeps giving up on security tech. Like, the LiDAR thing that Google had like in 2019 was left out of the Pixel 5, and they were talking about how it was going to be like the next big thing. So yeah, Snowman, I think you're right. The scanner, the iris scanner, is something. It was incomplete in the sense that it wasn't like it hadn't passed that place where you don't notice it being used. You don't notice that it's being used and it's happening, right? With Face ID, you hold up the phone, it's already unlocked. You don't have to think about it. You swipe up and you're in. And whenever a technology like that can disappear and you just don't notice it anymore, that to me is like when technology is doing its job. You shouldn't have to think about something like passive security, which is what Face ID is. Yeah, the Pixel 4 XL was a really good phone. I didn't try any of the Pixels from this year. I may still try the 5. I mean, I think I know what we're getting with the 4A. Because I had the 3A XL. So I think that's a pretty known entity, and I'm glad it exists, and I think it puts a really good phone in the hands of people who can only afford some of who can only afford like a less expensive phone, which may be everybody, but that's what payment plans are for. JC says he had the Pixel XL for 2 days and returned it because of how much I hated the face unlock. I liked that face unlock, but what I didn't like was the fact that the phone just opened. I like the fact that even though Face ID is like an instantaneous thing that you don't notice, I like to have some part of me doing something to actually open the phone. It's like, let's put it this way, like if you have a lock on your door, it's not enough just to put the key in and turn it. You still have to do something to open the door. And for that reason, it's useful to me in that, I'm not paranoid about somebody using my face while I'm sleeping or anything like that. I just think that opening straight into the phone brings some issues to bear. Do I think Apple will implement an always-on display for the iPhone this year? I don't know, because I don't know that Apple sees the value in the always-on display. I certainly like it on the phones that I have it, but Apple, with their Raise to Wake, I mean, I think Apple feels like that serves that purpose. You pick up your phone, it wakes up, you can see your notifications, the time, et cetera, and then you put it back down. Because I mean, even with an always-on display, you can see the time, but you still have to unlock and pull down the shade and then look at your notifications. Whereas with Raise to Wake, you pick up the phone and it shows you your notifications in whatever way you've chosen to display them. Jonathan, I haven't seen any of the third-party MagSafe stuff, but I did hear about the pop socket battery thing, and I think MagSafe is going to turn out to be a cool thing. MagSafe is going to turn out to be, a valuable thing for accessories. I don't think the MagSafe wallet is probably the most pointless and expensive is the most pointless and expensive accessory that, well, not that Apple has ever produced, because they've produced some really ridiculous stuff. But I mean, do you guys remember when they had little socks for the iPhones? Because that was the thing. And you could get a 5-pack in all kinds of different colors to put your iPod in. Let's see. So Heather asks, if you were to get out of the Apple ecosystem, how would you start? Well, I'd like to say that this is sort of the Hotel California clause of Apple's ecosystem. You can check out any time you like, but you can never leave. Sorry, that was cheesy. Honestly, if you wanted to get out of the Apple ecosystem, I think, well, there's really not any attractive options in terms of tablets. Apple's tablets do, the iPad is by leaps and bounds the best tablet out there. I don't think, and I'm not saying that as a fanboy or anything. I just, it's been the most successful. It's the deepest ecosystem for a tablet. It can almost replace a computer, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So when somebody tells me that they're like in the Apple ecosystem, I assume they have at least 3 Apple devices. That's the barrier to entry. So that would probably be like an iPhone, maybe an iPad, maybe a computer. So if you wanted to get out of the Apple ecosystem entirely, and you had at least those 3 devices, you would have to go with an Android phone, obviously. You'd probably have to get a Windows laptop that could satisfy your tablet needs. I think Samsung has the most stuff that, through SmartThings, that can integrate in the way that Apple does, maybe not to the full extent, but like they were showing yesterday with throwing your video stuff onto the TV. That was a feature that I saw at CES 2020 that they were rolling out. The only problem with that is you have to buy one of the more expensive Samsung televisions to get that feature at this point, unless your current Samsung television is upgraded to include that feature, which I don't know. So you're looking at, I don't know that you could ever sort of duplicate the Apple ecosystem in another ecosystem. But yeah, I mean, you're looking at a new phone, a new computer, and potentially more to get out of the Apple ecosystem. And that assumes that, if you have a Mac, if you have an iPhone, like a Mac or whatever, that Windows is even a good solution for you, because a lot of people rely on the Apple software. And so, if you use any of the Apple software, Final Cut or Logic, or, there's all kinds of stuff that's Apple specific in the App Store that don't have an analog over in the Google Play Store. So it would be really hard to switch out of the ecosystem and get the same functionality. Of course, you could always do it, but I think that the Apple Watch is superior to the other options out there. As I said, the iPad also superior. I have both PCs and Android phones and Macs and iPhones. And there are times that I wish that I could just say, you know what, I can get more value for my money going with the PC route. And I've tried this. If you've paid attention to the channel for the last few years, I've tried this many times. I've tried to go full PC. I've tried to go full Android. And it's just not, it just doesn't work for me. I suppose if I could only afford one, and the PC was more for the money, I'd have to figure it out. But I'm in the fortunate position that, I talk about this stuff for a living. So yeah, I'm fortunate enough to be able to have both. But bang for the buck wise, just like comparing parts to parts, you can get more for your money with Android and a PC, but it's not as seamless as just going with the ecosystem, unfortunately. I mean, tech in the car, I have used Premiere for years on and off, but the thing about Premiere that makes it really frustrating for me is that Premiere could be working fantastic, and then an update comes and breaks everything, and your whole workflow is messed up, and you're not getting your work done. And that's happened to me like more times than I care to think about with Premiere. And editing in Final Cut, especially for the kind of editing that I do, is super fast. I mean, I have my MX Master 2S, and I have the down button on the thumb pad here set to cut, and then the button right here set to delete. And so I can go through and just like cut, delete, cut, delete, cut, delete, and never really have to take my hand off the mouse or anything like that. So I can do it faster in Final Cut, although I like some aspects of Premiere better. I've used the Adobe Suite for work and other stuff for, since the mid 90s. So I'm very familiar with how the Adobe Suite works, like the work language of the Adobe Suite, and it allows you more freedom to do more stuff without having to stop the program from trying to do it for you. And I think one thing that happened with Final Cut, especially for somebody like I'm not like a Final Cut master. I could do stuff on Premiere that I would have to spend time figuring out how to do it on Final Cut. And that's after using Final Cut and iMovie for since 2013. So yeah, there are ways to do it. There are ways to switch and get all the same stuff done in relatively the same way. But I fought the law, and the law won. So Danny, good to see you, man. Thank you. People still requesting the Gambler tribute. Oh, that makes me feel good. Back in my home state, which is has been in the news for all the wrong reasons recently, but I'm glad it's still people are still enjoying it. Thanks, man. I appreciate it. So Heather says, bad decision was the MacBook Pro because I don't do any video editing, just web looking. Yeah. I mean, there's not enough difference, especially if you're talking like the new M1 Max. There's not enough difference between the iPad or the MacBook Air and the MacBook Pro to warrant spending the extra money if you're not using it for a professional application. But I guess the silver lining in that is that Macs last forever. So if you're one of those people who hangs on to stuff and gets the full useful life from it, then it'll balance out for you in the end. But yeah, there's not a ton of reasons to buy any of the Pro models over the Air if you don't have a reason to use it in a Pro setting. So Doodle is watching this right now using that Samsung TV casting thing. Right corner on YouTube mobile app on the Tab S4. That's cool, man. I don't have a Samsung TV, although some of these features make me want to go out and get a Samsung TV. Excuse me. Just because I want to try some of this stuff out. But I don't know. Samsung makes really good TVs, but what I've found with Samsung TVs, so I have an LG OLED TV, and one of the reasons why I really like the OLED is because of how it handles color. And OLED TVs are better suited to be in a darker room. and our TV room is kind of like, it's not a basement. It's like, this is a split level house, so there are like windows, but they're not huge windows. So that works really well for our use. But Samsung TVs are really good for bright rooms because they're really bright TVs. And before I had bought I had an LG OLED before, and when I went out last year to buy a new TV, I tried the Samsung Q80 first, and it was a great TV. It looked awesome, but it was so bright. It was like, burn my eyes out bright, because our room is not a big room either. So you're sitting probably like 6 to 8 feet away from the TV, and yeah, it's hard. So I ended up going back and getting the OLED, the newer OLED from LG. Burn-in has never been a problem, and I think burn-in is something that was an issue in the early days of OLED, but companies have really been able to push the technology forward and be a lot better about having ways to combat burn-in. The TVs themselves have some stuff that they do in the background to combat burn-in, and then the TVs themselves are also less prone to burn-in than they were back in the day. I've had 2 OLED TVs now, so I guess I've had probably for about 4 years. I've had OLED in the house, and I've never experienced any burn-in. That, I mean, if it was there, it was not visible. So, and I sold the previous OLED, and the guy who came and bought it, he was like, he had done all his research online and knew how to look for it, and he said he could see some little ghosting after like looking at it with a microscope, but burn-in on OLEDs is not nearly the concern that I think it's been made up to be. Every LG TV review I've watched on the new models, they always mention burn-in. Yeah, and to me that's unfortunate. I think that the people who do those reviews, especially the ones that work for companies, I think they feel like they have to say something about it, because in the off chance that burn-in did occur, they don't want to be the person who didn't warn the consumer about it. But it's in my experience, it hasn't been an issue. And as Hugo says, OLED cells now like never stop moving. So that helps to prevent burn-in. His explanation is much more detailed than mine, but yeah, they've been better in the last several years. I would say, like, so I had an LG 65-inch B7, so the 2017 model, that was the one that I had before. And I guess I should say that there are people out there who leave their TV on like 24 hours a day. One of my wife's roommates in college always had the TV on. Like, even when they weren't home, the TV was still on. And it didn't make any sense to me, but there are people who watch TV and leave it on and all that kind of stuff. And so I would say that if that's your preferred method of using your television, OLED might not be your best choice, just in case. But I think that having the TV on all day, every day is probably not a healthy lifestyle choice anyway, but I don't know. OLED is expensive, Aldo. However, Vizio put out an OLED TV that was just over $1,000 this year, which And now TCL is coming out with an 8K mini LED TV. And I saw the TCL mini LED TVs last year at CES, and mini LED is kind of a cross between OLED and like an LED TV, in the sense that it had really great color representation, whereas the OLED TVs had better black to black contrast. Like OLED TVs they look much richer with a lot of their content that they shoot, and that's because whenever an OLED TV is showing black, the pixels are turned off, and so that is it just provides better it just provides a better contrast, whereas the mini LED, really the colors popped, it was tight. So I'm looking forward to the TCL 8K mini LED TV that they come out with this year, because that could be super. Because TCL, as you know, like, their TVs aren't as expensive, and there's a reason for that. But they could be, having a TV that's reasonably priced that has that kind of technology in it could definitely disrupt the market to a certain extent. I mean, OLED is becoming more of a thing. More companies are making OLED TVs slowly, but the mini LED thing is pretty much has been TCL's game to this point. And so I'm anxious to see, like, if they come out with a 65-inch 8K mini LED TV that's anywhere between $1,000 and $2,000. I don't know if that's what it's going to be priced, but if they do get it there, like say $1,200 or $1,500, yeah, that could be a big deal. Ed Bird asked, did I used to be a teacher? Yes, I did. I used to teach creative writing and literature, as well as, like, I was an administrator at the University of Iowa at the medical school. And I mean, I had several other teaching gigs as well. I taught for a little bit more than 15 years all told. And yeah, I love teaching. I mean, I don't think you can take the teacher out of the teacher. So I think probably a lot of what I do on YouTube still is coming from the mentality of being a teacher. So Samuel asked, why can't they come out with TVs every 3 years and do software updates on the older ones? Some TVs can have an HDMI 2.1 update, and some TVs don't have the hardware that can support it. And I think that's the big thing with models coming out year over year, is that it's not just the software that changes, it's the technology as well. And as fast as the technology is advancing right now, I mean, you could have a TV and keep it for 3 years and go buy a new TV with the same stuff or the same price range that is like leaps and bounds better than what you had from 3 years ago. And that's part of why TCL and Hisense and Vizio, to a certain extent, that's why they sell their TVs at the price point they sell them. They don't use they don't use as high a quality parts on their TVs as, say, a Sony, an LG, a Samsung does, but they do have the technologies. So what happens is a TCL TV, a Hisense TV, something like that, might be a good investment if you're going to keep your TV for like 3 to 5 years, but they're not as reliable beyond that point. Whereas, like, you know, you can buy, or at least back in the day, I haven't had a Sony TV for a long time, but back in the day, if you bought a Sony TV, like a CRT Sony TV, that was your TV for like 15, 20 years. And it's just not like that anymore. And as Jonathan says here, like TCL Vizio, this TV that's behind me right here is a Hisense, and it's basically got all the features that if I were to get the same TV with the same feature set in a Samsung QLED TV, it would cost $2,200 at the time that I was shopping. That TV was $559, $549. Yeah. So you get great technology for a low price. Maybe they don't come as well calibrated out of the box and all that kind of stuff, but you get that. The trade-off is, you know, longevity. And that's not to say that those TVs won't last past 5 years. They absolutely probably would. It's just, you know, TCL makes their money by using cheaper parts, selling for less, and getting repeat customers. Yeah, Panasonic plasma TVs were special, really special. I remember like several years ago now, because plasma hasn't been available for several years. I bought the last plasma TV that my local Best Buy had. I think it was a 55-inch TV. It was the it was the display model that they had, and it was the last plasma TV they had in the store. And I loved that TV. The only problem was it was 55 inches, and it just, the way that this was in our other house, and it just wasn't set up to be able to get a good viewing distance for that TV. So, but the technology, that plasma technology, I think in other places in the world, they still sell plasma TVs. It's just, they went out of the US market probably, you know, 5+ years ago. And I think that like LED TVs are cheaper to make, probably a little bit more sturdy, and they're lighter. So there's probably a lot of efficiencies that companies can get from selling LED TVs over plasma. But, you know, it's not to say that the plasma technology was surpassed. So, although I do think I'd still take my OLED TV over a plasma. I've never had a TV as that was as satisfying to look at with almost any content that you throw at it as the LG OLEDs that I've had. They are very expensive. They're getting cheaper, but they still are very expensive. When I buy TVs, I buy at times when they're guaranteed to be on sale. Like, I bought both of my OLED TVs around the holidays, when, you know, the TV that, like, I have a 65-inch C9 TV, and from LG, and I think the original sticker price was like I think $2,900 or $2,800, and I ended up getting it for $2,000 and change. So you know, I never pay the full sticker price because, frankly, I can't afford to pay the full sticker price. Michael Null asks, why do you think Apple doesn't make a TV? Because they make Apple TV, and I think at the time they saw that as the best gateway into people's living rooms, like to have a set-top box, as opposed to competing with Samsung, LG, Sony, et cetera. I would love to see what Apple would do with the TV, but I also dread what the price of an Apple TV might be. I mean, yeah, a TV, you know, if Apple made a TV that was comparable to another 65-inch TV that cost $2,000, Apple's would probably cost $3,500, and that's a lot of money. So I don't know. I'd like to see it. I don't know if we ever will. It looks like we might actually see an Apple car, though. So I don't know if I'll try that. Chromecast disappeared to Airplay. It may very well be. I'll say this: I've had more success consistently getting Airplay 2 to work over Chromecast. Chromecast has always been finicky for me, and I don't know if it's me or the Chromecast. So, how many TVs support Airplay? Yeah, a lot at this point. I mean, I just got the Xbox Series X, and you can get the Apple TV app on that. So Apple has loosened the reins of what they're willing to do with their properties. And I mean, part of that is because they are within the next year, we're going to understand exactly how much Apple has built their subscription services, and it's going to be crazy. The money will be crazy. Apple will be the leader in, online service distribution by a long shot very soon. I don't think there's really any numbers about that right now, but they will be. How long? The stream has been going on for 1 hour and 22 minutes. Probably going to go another 10 minutes or so, and then I got to get, well, I guess it would be lunch now. I haven't eaten yet today. So, yeah, Ace, you know what I do? So I have those HomePods set up as my surround sound setup, and I still really like that. So I pretty much do Apple TV for all of my stuff. And of course, the HBO Max app is on there. One thing I like about the Apple TV is that it has the Apple TV app, which, sort of pays attention to what you're watching on all the different services like Netflix. Well, not Netflix for some reason, but Amazon and other places, HBO, etc. And then it keeps sort of a running tab on what you were watching, and it suggests like, oh, there's a new episode of this show just out. And so it's a nice hub for watching. I've always been frustrated with having to go from app to app to app to app to watch different things. And so the Apple TV app on the Apple TV does a really great job of sort of bringing that all to one spot. Tech in the car, I don't disagree with you on that. CarPlay seems to me like it still needs some TLC, and it hasn't gotten it yet. I'm still frustrated that, so I have a 2017 Audi A4 that supports CarPlay and Airplay, or not Airplay, but Android Auto, and I'm still frustrated that like you have to plug your phone in to use it. Now I don't know if newer cars are able to support those services wirelessly, but I guess it's not a big deal. I don't drive very far very often, so plugging my phone in to use the Android TV, the Android Auto, or the CarPlay is kind of an inconvenience. Like if I'm just running to the grocery store and I want to use it, et cetera, et cetera. But yeah, Android Auto definitely has its game together a little bit more. I agree with you on that. Yeah, I'm going to have breakfast for lunch as well. So you can mirror your iPhone on the LG, but can't Tell me how you do that. Because yeah, I'm curious about that mirroring. I've never done it. Um, so newer cars support wireless AirPlay. Okay, well, at this point, I got I got that Audi when I was still working the day job, and I love the car. I love that car. It is super fun to drive. It is a very nice car, but I barely drive anywhere. So I keep thinking, like, does it make sense to pay the monthly payment, which isn't terrible but isn't great, um, when I don't drive all that much and we still have two other cars, uh, and one is my Chevy Volt. Well, it's really, we gave it to my daughter to use, but she can't drive yet. She's 17. She hasn't really gotten the driving thing going yet. Um, so yeah, I don't know if it makes sense to keep paying for that car, and I would hate to get rid of it, but it might be the financially prudent thing to do. Um, I'm sure that I'll try them out. I know that they the ones that people are reviewing right now. They've sent me they sent me the Q30s, and I have to get back in touch with them to get some of the newer stuff. So I would like to check them out. Do I think there'll be a new Apple TV this year? I don't know. I really feel like for what it's necessary to do with an Apple TV, that the 4K Apple TV is still plenty good to handle what it needs to do in terms of processing power and that kind of thing. So I don't know. It's hard to say. The 4K came out it's probably like 3 or 4, maybe 5 years ago, but I just don't feel that it's not performing as it needs. I mean, it's performing perfectly well, except for the fact that sometimes my HDMI goes out when I'm using Dolby, but that might be a hardware issue. So, Theron, what year do you have? What volt do you have? What year? I've got a 2013. I have tried leasing Hitchhiker. Uh, I didn't really like it. I didn't like the feeling of like I'm not. I, I've had so many cars over the years, and one of the things that I was so used to is the fact that when you buy a car, you own it. Even if you have payments on it, you still own the car. Like you could theoretically pay it off, and it would be yours. And leases just, I don't know. Maybe I'm old school about vehicles, um, but I just feel better owning a car than leasing. I know you can buy the leases after the lease period is over, but it just doesn't feel the same to me. New MacBook Designs. So I meant to pull up a picture of it, but basically, Ming-Chi Kuo came out with some stuff that looks like it's the new design for the MacBooks with, squared off edges and flat, and probably more. Think of the iPad Pro in MacBook form, which looks pretty great, honestly. If that's what I'm waiting for, the M1X with that new design, then I'm psyched. Hugo, I've never, I've always meant to try V-Moda headphones. I just never have. So maybe this will be the time. Is the S21 Ultra worth it? It's more worth it at $1,200 than it would have been at $1,400. It's the only phone from this S21 line that doesn't have super huge compromises. So I'd say if you were going to buy an S line phone this year, the best one to buy would be the S21 Ultra, even though it's super expensive. So Edward will donate if I drink hot sauce. I'm not drinking any hot sauce. I mean, not that I couldn't, but yeah. Pretty much it will look like the older MacBook Pros, which, I mean, really like the new design of the iPhone, and people complain that it looks like the old iPhone, but the old iPhone was awesome. So, so yeah. Hitchhiker asks, does the S21 have a flat or curved screen? It's flatter, but it's not totally flat from what I could tell. It doesn't have the super thin edges of what we've had in the years past. Like, I basically can't use the S20 Ultra without some kind of case on it because my fingers will trigger things when I'm holding the phone. And I know there's, the good lock app or whatever it is. Even when I tried that, it didn't work as well. So what's the best replacement for Google Play Music? That is a good question. I mean, you don't want to listen to YouTube music? I can't imagine. I'll get back to you in a second with that. I know that Rich makes money for taking off his shirt. I don't think I'm going to ever take off my shirt. I mean, I guess it's just shoulders up, but still. I don't need to maybe I do need to make money doing stuff like that. $50 a stream would be pretty good. But anyway, Google Play Music, there's a lot. It depends on a lot. I've used all of them. I most recently tried Spotify for the first time since years and years and years ago. And I did really like Spotify more than I did before. So that's like a good safe recommendation. If you want high quality audio, there's always Tidal, but I don't like Tidal's algorithm for finding more music for you to listen to. The Amazon stuff is pretty good, and they have like a high quality audio service that you can subscribe to as well for a little bit more money. I keep going back to Apple Music, and there's just mostly because I mostly went back to Apple Music right now because it's included in my Verizon plan, and it doesn't make sense to pay for another music service if I'm getting Apple Music for free. But yeah, I did like Spotify. I like that Tidal can offer you a lot of high quality audio stuff. But yes, as Aldo says, Tidal's algorithm sucks. A lot of music services have become really good at recommending stuff based on what I listen to. I mean, YouTube isn't really as good as a lot of the music services are. So I because I don't listen to modern pop music. I'm sure that that's shocking to you all, but I don't listen to modern pop unless forced. and so Apple Music has been like finding more obscure things that I like than it had before. Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like we pay for premium as well, but I can't do YouTube music. I just don't. The quality isn't really there, which I'm sure doesn't matter to most people in most situations, but it does to me. Even though I'm I'm not like one of those people who cares about what codec the music is in or anything like that. I think all of that is like snake oil for the most part. So I've just spent the most time with Apple Music at this point, and I think that's why it's good. So YouTube Music doesn't have a scroll bar? Huh. Interesting. Yeah, I don't know. My daughter uses YouTube Music, but I think YouTube Music is more geared toward, teenagers. Yes, Spotify was testing lossless a couple of years ago. They still stream, like if you pay for the upper tier of Spotify service, they still stream at pretty high quality. I mean, you seriously would be hard pressed 9 times out of 10 to be able to tell a lossless audio file when compared to a 320 megabits per second MP3. 320 is pretty high quality, honestly. So yeah. Which phone do I hate the most? Man. That's a good question. Geez. Yes, Ace, you're a teen at heart. Bob, I don't know if we're going to get a new updated HomePod. I mean, we just got the new HomePod Mini, so I think the HomePod still has improved since it first came out, and yeah, I don't think it's going to happen soon, but it will happen at some point. See, yeah, I can't. It's hard for me to say I hate a smartphone. But I tested the Note 20, and it was a pretty decent phone, all things told. But again, Samsung made it a ridiculous choice for people because they were charging $1,000 for it. You should not charge $1,000 for a phone that has a plastic back. And I'm not against the plastic backs. I think that they're more durable. I like the feel of them, all that kind of stuff. So I don't hate plastic backs, but I don't think you should pay over $1,000 for a phone that has it. So that was probably my biggest problem with the Note 20. And the Note 20 Ultra is a better phone in almost every way, but it was also several $100s more expensive. Do I think there'll be a V70, or will I buy the V70? I mean, I've heard conflicting things about whether or not the V series is going to continue, which really bums me out. But if there's a V70, I definitely will get one. I mean, LG was nice enough to send me the V60 this year, as well as the Velvet. And the V60 is still like a super great phone. I'm using this right now because it's Samsung week, but I also feel obligated because I spent so much money on it. But I think I'm going to end up selling this phone and using the V60. Like, I have a ton of phones, and most of them I'm not going to use, and I don't feel like it makes sense to have that many phones that you're not going to use. So I'm probably going to sell a lot of phones. But the V60 will be one that I keep. V70 is going to be called the Rainbow. Ick. I've heard that the quad DAC might not be around anymore, which again, I get it. LG has hung in there for years and years and years when the rest of the industry moved on, and I appreciate them for it. It's just going to be a sad day when the last high quality headphone jack leaves the earth. But you have to explain this. People hate Samsung because of the graphics. I don't know. You're right. I do really like the V60. Like I said, it's sort of that I paid a bunch of money for this phone, and so I feel obligated to use it sometimes. I realized when I put my SIM card back in this phone earlier in the week, um, I'd been using the iPhone exclusively since the iPhone 12 came out, um, which I didn't. And that's not a long time to use a phone, but for me, given what I do, it kind of is. So yeah, I mean, I think the iPhone will always be the phone that I gravitate toward the most, but the V60 is the phone that is closest to my perfect phone. The iPhone, just because because I'm in the Apple ecosystem, as they say, I can get texts and calls on my computer or on my watch. I can use it as a remote for the Apple TV. There's just so much stuff that you could do. Um, and so it's hard to, and it took me forever to get like all my hue lights and everything else assigned in the right way to all the right places. So now it's like, um, now like again, I can't escape the Apple. Um, so my experience with messaging is just that if you're messaging somebody with an iPhone, you get the blue bubble, and if you're going with somebody who's on an Android phone, you get the green bubble. And I've never had to do anything specifically to make it work. Although I do know that some people have had issues, but I never have. But yeah, I guess Signal is the new hotness for that. However, iMessage for people who, for iPhone users is still like a much more full featured um, messaging service, higher quality audio or higher quality video and images and that kind of stuff. So NVIDIA Shield is definitely the best streaming player, as well as Plex server. I would sign off on that for sure. Um, I have the Shield from, well, before this most recent model, and I don't have it hooked up right now, but I still want to get like the Plex server going, and that's probably the easiest way to do it. Although I do have a Synology NAS, and I could hook it up that way, but it seems more difficult than using the Shield. Um, oh, so Signal is more secure than iMessage. I don't know. Tim Cook might be mad at you for saying that. He seems to like his security. You know what? Ultimately, what happens for me is I only text like 4 people, and they all have iPhones. So you know, it's yeah, it's a sad life. It's a sad life. I've been so isolated from the world. It actually is like I like being alone. Don't get me wrong. It's one of my favorite ways to be. Um, but yeah, being alone in the studio, just doing my own stuff. It is starting to wear on me about a year in. So how would you keep track of 7 messaging apps? Like I would just go nuts. But so we know the V70 has a code name Rainbow, but yeah, we know yeah. So it's redesign. Yeah, I don't know if it makes sense for LG to stick with the headphone jack. I don't know. It might be partially their fault for not marketing the phone properly, but I don't know that having the headphone jack has sold them enough phones. They never put it out there as like the quote unquote audiophiles smartphone. But if they did, I think they would have sold more phones. Yeah, that's exactly right. They, the audio enthusiasts are not, floating Samsung's bills. So it's, Leonardo, love your work, by the way. It's hard to get LG phones just about anywhere. I mean, even like I know that in carrier stores here in the US, LG phones are pretty highly incentivized for the salespeople. Like they get more money for selling LG phones, but they're still not like prominently featured. They might have two LG phones like in the back corner of the Verizon store. So LG, they've slipped. I like the direction that they're going. I like that they're doing different things, but I don't know if it's too late for them or not. If Samsung keeps screwing up, LG might have a chance. So we'll see. I can definitely recommend a phone, but I need to know if you want Android or iPhone, or if you want a $500 phone or $1,000 phone or a $200 phone. Like, yeah, there are things that I would need to know. So they haven't sold LG hasn't sold the flagships in the UK and Ireland at all this past year. Wow. Aldo, thank you very much. Android. Okay, we know that Edward wants an Android phone. Give us a price range, and then we can tell you. Yeah, Alan, that's probably a good way to go. I ended up trading my Note 9 to get a discount on the Note 20. But I still wish I had the Note 9. I guess I could probably still get one, but Hugo, thank you for the $5 for coffee. I appreciate it, man, because I'm actually feeling. I only got 3 hours of sleep last night because I couldn't get to sleep until 5 a.m. So I'm starting to fade, but you know how it is. So you think that LG is going to get out of the mobile business? It's quite possible. Yeah, I know we've been hanging around 200. I've seen 225 or something like that. So yeah, well-attended stream. Thank you, everyone. Oh, we got Juan Bagnell, who is the guru of the LG world. So he says that LG market share in the US climbed almost half of Samsung's share over 20. Okay, that's good. A quarter of all Android phones sold were LG. Good to know. I'm glad that that's the case. Thank you for the super sticker, Brett. I appreciate it. I think part of what people don't understand about LG is that their mid-range and like sort of more lower tier phones sell like crazy. Like they have the LG Stylo, and I think a lot of people buy that phone, and they have some nice looking phones at like the 500 and below range. So yeah, I think they do well in that mid to lower end market, and that helps bolster them, even though maybe they're not selling as many flagships. So, word around the campfire is Apple just extended Apple TV Plus free trial again. Will we ever have to pay? I hope not. I hope not. For the amount of money that we spend on Apple stuff, we should get this service for free. Although I did sign up for the 1 month trial of Fitness Plus. Haven't used it once, and I noticed yesterday I just got charged for another month. So, yeah, yeah. I was talking to folks. I was talking to Danny Winget and Carl Conrad about Peloton on Twitter this morning, and I was like, maybe I'll try this Peloton. And I went and I looked, and you can't get anything from that company before, like, if you ordered today, it's 8 to 10 weeks to receive your piece of gear, and that to me is not enough. I need it sooner, or I'll lose my resolve. Yeah, Juan's right. All manufacturers really do a lot of business with their lower end phones. I mean, like he says, the 10R hangs in with the 12. I'm sure the 11 is still selling like gangbusters, and the A series it definitely outsells the S series, and there's a reason for that. Like I tested the A71 earlier in the year last year, and really liked it. I mean, I didn't really feel like it was that much of a step down at all from the S series, and even more so now that they've kind of taken some things away from the S series. So it's worth looking at I guess the A71 and the A51 are the ones that are still on the market, but they're both good phones, especially for the price. Aldo, thank you. I appreciate the trust. I will try my best to continue to deserve it. Man, I would love to buy myself a pint of Guinness, but I haven't had a drink in almost 10 years. Did love me some Guinness though. I'll put it toward a nice latte or something. That's my jam these days. But I appreciate the super chat, man. Everyone should smash the like button 220 times. I agree. It just takes a moment of your time, and it means so much. Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I don't, there was all this 5G talk with flagship phones this year. And 5G is definitely not worth buying a phone for just because it has 5G at this point. But I don't think a lot of people knew that, like, the step down phones from the flagships there were some that also had 5G service. And the Velvet is a sexy phone. It's a sexy phone for sure. I don't know what the future is for that or the dual screen phones in general. But yeah, if somebody came to me and said, what Android phone should I get? I don't think my recommendation this year would be a flagship. At this point, I don't know what we're going to see from other manufacturers yet in 2021, but I don't think I'd say a flagship. I think I'd say, well, if you don't care about like all the fanciness and that kind of thing, and you just want a really solid phone that's not going to break the bank, then A71, Velvet. I mean, there's some really good stuff out there that you can get in that mid-tier range. 5G is a buzzword. I mean, it's the marketing term of the year. I mean, I get 5G service, but I don't notice any real difference because it's probably just the like 4G plus service. Juan, thank you, man. I appreciate the kind words about the AirPods Max. I appreciate it, man. Yeah, I still have them boxed up, ready to send back. and I'm still struggling because I do like them a lot. Appreciate it, man. It was good to see you, and we'll have to do so. We'll have to get together for a stream sometime soon, Juan. Why hasn't Google found the way to hit the button without leaving a live stream? I don't know. I'm usually doing the live stream, so I don't have that problem. What is Sweatgate? Oh, you're talking about the AirPods Max. Yeah, it's a real thing. Again, I mean, super fans of any company will do almost anything to convince themselves that what are really serious problems are not serious problems. Like, I've had so many people come into my comment sections and say the only reason that the AirPods Max are having this condensation issue is because you can take the ear pads off and see it, which makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. There are plenty of headphones that you can take the ear pads off. I have several that the ear pads come off just as easily, and I've never seen condensation building up in any of those. I mean, a lot of gaming headsets, you can take the ear pads off, and you wear gaming headsets for longer than I think you probably wear any other kind of headset. At least I think the longest I've probably worn a gaming headset is like 5 or 6 hours at a time. And I've never seen I've never seen any kind of like condensation inside of those headphones. So I do think it at least, I mean, maybe if it happens, it never happens to the degree that it's happening with the AirPods Max. So yeah, I guess T-Mobile has a good network. Like, it was funny, we were all wondering, like, once Apple announced the iPhone 12, whether or not Verizon was just going to turn on the switch for 5G, and that's what they did. Like, as soon as the iPhone came out, I had 5G service on all my phones. It was weird, but Apple is the tastemaker. If Apple does it, then people are going to follow because Apple makes a lot of money. Which phone do I think is best for 2021? Good question, man. I mean, it's a weird transitional year for Android because obviously the first phone that we've seen is the S21 line, and Samsung has made some cuts. I know Samsung wants to push the fold phones this year. I know they do. In fact, I think they might be sort of tanking their other phones to a certain degree to get people to consider buying the folding phones. I might make a video about my thoughts on whether or not Samsung is tanking to get people to buy folding phones in 2021. I don't know. It's hard to say. Like, there are always going to be solid Android phones out there. At this point, it's hard to buy a bad phone. It's really hard to buy a bad phone, even in the mid-range and lower end. Like, TCL came out with 3 phones under $500 last year. They were all really good phones. And TCL is coming out with some other sexy phones this year. So yeah, I don't think you can get a bad phone. Some phones are geared toward gaming, some phones are geared toward power use, some phones are just like for the everyday average Joe. You have to decide what it is that you want out of it. But at the end of the day, I think they're all going to be quote unquote good phones. The Z Flip does seem pointless, doesn't it? I don't understand. I might, you know, I'll put that on the list for next week. It's, Travis was in here earlier, and my Samsung videos this week have not performed super well, and he said his Samsung videos weren't performing all that much, and it kind of feels like maybe there just isn't that much interest in the Samsung phones right now. Maybe, but I do think Samsung's tactics with how they're deploying these phones and what they're taking out and leaving in, and how they're pricing things. It It's not a conspiracy. I mean, companies do this. They try and incentivize, what they want, people to buy. It makes sense. But yeah, I don't know. Um, Professor Xavier, yes, I do think that the leaking thing has just gotten out of control. Um, there are some legitimate people who get information, and you know, then there are dozens, if not hundreds, of other people who just either regurgitate what those legitimate people have said, um, or they just make stuff up. So I don't know. I mean, I don't like the leaking thing because it does take some of the specialness away from when the phones actually come out. Um, I think most people probably feel like they knew everything that was going to be of interest with the Samsung S21s, and so there was not a whole lot of reason to get excited. Um, ooh, I like that title. I like that. I like that. Uh, phones are, yes, phones are nowhere near as interesting as they were in the early days of the smartphone, because in the early days of smartphones, like every year, you were getting better experience year after year after year. And now we've kind of reached the ceiling of what's possible with the current smartphone, I guess, form factor. The phones can do amazing things, and they're really amazing to use, and it's amazing that we have. I'm using this word amazing, but it's just, if you think back 10 years and think about what flip phones were like for us, and then, and I guess that was more than 10 years ago at this point. Um, yeah, it's lost some of its like it factor, some of the newness, and excitement is gone from smartphones, and that's across the board. The past couple of years, as I've talked about smartphones, it's been hard for me to like really talk talk about, there's not a lot to differentiate one phone from the other, so it's hard to really get in there. Yeah, you're right. They aren't as interesting anymore, and I'm actually wondering, like, should I transition not away from smartphones but into more audio related stuff and other stuff that I'm interested in that's related to smartphones in some way or another. Because it's really hard to come up with smartphone topics that are interesting, that like I even want to talk about, let alone people want to watch. So, and Hugo, I appreciate the call out. Yeah, if anybody's interested in the lowest end membership for the channel is $2 per month, and with that you get access to, I don't even remember, but it does really help the channel. Yeah, it does really help the channel. And so, you know, there's gonna be like private live streams and all kinds of stuff like that. So if it's something you're interested in, something that you can do, and if you enjoy the content, then yeah, joining at that $2 level would be awesome. Button is right down below. Thank you, Hugo, for bringing that up. Electric vehicle channel. Do you think there are going to be enough people interested in my 2013 Chevy Volt? I mean, I would love to have a Tesla. It's until until I start making money. Yeah, I don't know. I love that technology. I just don't know that I have enough access to stuff to make an enjoyable electric car channel. You should be able to join on mobile, Snowman. I'm not sure, actually. I know it might be like an iPhone versus Android thing. I remember hearing something about it, but I'm not exactly sure. Professor Xavier, I have to say the smart home stuff is interesting, and I like that smartphone stuff or smart home stuff has become more mature, and it looks like the space age home of the future is within reach at this point. As much I signed up for CES and quite honestly did not pay attention to it at all. But I'm excited to see what smart home stuff has coming in the future. I've been given some opportunities to, you know, do some sponsored stuff for some smart home stuff. And I'm considering that. I mean, you know, sponsor stuff is what it is. I will never review anything in a sponsored video, but I will do like, here's what it is, et cetera, et cetera. So yeah, smart home stuff is very interesting to me. Volt has the longest EV range of any hybrid. Yeah, that's true. I mean, my car gets about 35 miles. I know that improved over the years as the Volt continued to iterate. But yeah, I mean, the thing that I liked about the Volt is that, well, I mean, there's a lot to like about the Volt. But what I ended up liking the most is that when I was working the day job, I could go to and from the office every day without using any gas. And, you know, I could make that trip for probably 3 days out of the week without even having to charge because my work wasn't that far from my house. So, yeah. Oh, yeah, that might be right. You might not be able to join from an iPhone because of Apple's, you know, App Store take a cut thing. What are my favorite bands? Okay, this is going to be, I'm going to take 2 more questions and then I'm going to go because I too am hungry like Samuel. But okay, just to finish the thought about the memberships, if you can't join through the app, you can always go to the YouTube webpage for the channel, and I'm pretty sure you can get the link from there. It's just right down at the bottom of the description. I don't think YouTube has got all the bugs worked out of how to do all this stuff, but yeah. Don't trust American cars. American cars are cars. I mean, I know there are a lot of good cars that have come from other places, but I don't know. I mean, yes, it is a terrible UX. Okay, 2 more questions. First, Diego wants to know, what are my favorite bands? I like a lot of bands. I'll give you my top 3 favorite bands, and this is kind of all time. some of these bands might not hit my playlist as often as they did back in the day. So the Beatles by far are my overall favorite. I mean, I don't know if you guys usually don't see my arm, but let's see if can I get it in the shot so it's actually visible. I have a tattoo of the Beatles on my arm. Okay, so it's pretty serious. I'm gonna then say Husker Du, band from the hard punk rock band from the 80s, and Uncle Tupelo. Although, you know, they split off into two separate bands, Sunvolt and Wilco. I know people who play in those bands, and yeah, so those are probably my top three all time. Although, you know, they might fall out of the top three from time to time. So those are my top three. So Ace says the webpage is the place to join. Okay. All right. Last question before I go eat food. What is it? What is it? Somebody hit me with a question so I don't have to scroll up. Come on. Leave me hanging here. What am I eating? Probably a bowl of cereal. Because I don't cook. Replacements are definitely in my pantheon. Big Star is probably in my top 10. Guided by Voices, another band that I haven't listened to them as much, but I really do like Guided by Voices quite a bit. So not Grape Nuts. Probably either. Well, I have Cinnamon Life, or either strawberry or regular frosted mini wheats. So it's going to be one of those two. Favorite guitar chord. Okay, that's a good one for the last question. The guitar chord that I probably use the most is G, but my favorite guitar chord is probably F sharp minor. I just like the way it sounds. So there's something about, like, when you can use F sharp minor as as a passing note from one chord to the next, it's just really nice. So anyway, I'm going to be done. I did this much longer than I thought I would. I was planning on an hour. So you guys kept me going. I appreciate it. I appreciate everybody showing up. You know, we had a ton of people in here, and I really do appreciate it. It's always fun to just have these conversations rather than like the pressure of making a video. And, you know, so thank you guys for being here. I really do appreciate it. It's the weekend. Hope everybody has a great weekend, and I will talk to you all soon. I mean, podcast live streams 8 p.m. Eastern time on Tuesday every week. So if you haven't been able to hang with us on Tuesday, please come. It's always a boisterous discussion. I mean, it's hard to say. That's hard to say. Anyway, talk to you guys later. Once again, my name is Jason. This is Painfully Honest Tech, a little bit of a live stream for the Friday morning. Until the next time, I'm out.